Very, very packed agenda, so Sandy and I are under a lot of pressure. Carm has an over-under that we're gonna be here till 6 o'clock, but we're gonna make sure that we get you out of here before then. So, let's, start by going around and introducing ourselves as we always do. Kathy Sheehan, City of Albany.
Mike Arthur, DOT. Carm Brazil, CDTA.
Tom Houlihan, City of Rensselaer.
Linda Bondeheim, representing Steve McLaughlin, Rensselaer County Executive.
Mike Butler, City of Mechanicville.
Kim Lambert, Saratoga County, representing Tom Warner.
Phil Serafino, Thruway Authority. Andrew Preshik, City of Troy, representing here, Carmelo and Hello.
Bill Barrett, Saratoga County Board of Supervisors Chairman.
Larry Schillinger, representing the Capital District Regional Planning Commission.
Stephen Donnelly, Town of Queens.
Patrick Jordan, Port of Albany.
Sandy Miswitz, Transportation Council staff.
Jen Saponis, Transportation Council staff.
Marcus Stiglione, Capital District Regional Planning Commission. Howard Goble, City of Albany. Jacob Beeman, Transportation Council. Greg Berkshire, DOT.
Gary Moore, Transportation Council staff.
And I'll just quickly read through who's listening in. Stephen Maples from the Transportation Council, and Andrew Tracy from the Transportation Council, Chris Fowler from the Transportation Council, Chris Wallen from the City of Schenectady, Cynthia Young from, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your.
Supervisor Town of Malta.
Thank you, Malta. Dan Lara, Transportation Council, Laura Robertson, Town of Niskuna, M. Collins. If you could just put your affiliation in the chat, that would be great. Michael Lally, Albany County, Bob Rice from NISDOT, Scott Rice from the Village of Scottacoke, and Tess Droszczak from Transportation Council. Did I miss anyone?
Great. Well, welcome everyone. We're gonna start by, I need a motion to adopt the minutes. You should have received them from our December 7th and February 15th meetings.
Just one adjustment. We left Pat Jordan off the February meeting notes, so we just want to make that adjustment.
I actually blame that on Carm.
Just
That was
trying,
on purpose.
just trying to make sure you read the meeting, the meeting minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, they're adopted. And now I'm gonna turn it over to Sandy. She has a presentation on the work of the nominating subcommittee.
Great, thanks, Mayor. So every year we have a nominating subcommittee that is comprised of 6 individuals from this group, largely our admin and finance committee members, and to appoint our officers for the policy board for the year, as well as some other representatives on the policy board and our planning committee. So I'll read through the nominees for this year and the different roles, and then we can take a vote and have discussion at the end. So the nominees for policy board officers are Mayor Kathy Sheehan for the chair, Carm Basile for vice chair, and Mike Arthur for secretary for the policy board. For town and village representatives on the policy board, we have 2 voting members. The nominees for the member are Steve Donnelly from town of Queens, Mayor Scott Rice from the Village of Scottacoke, and as the alternates, we have Supervisor Scott Ostrander from the town of Milton and Supervisor Molly Collins from the town of Rotterdam. And then on the planning committee, we have a town and village representative. There's 1 voting member. The member nominee this year is John Scavo from the town of Clifton Park. And we have a series of alternates from the town of Bethlehem, Guilderland, Malta, Rotterdam, and Nantes, East Greenwich, and Niskuna, many of which are community planners. That would back up John if he should be unable to attend. So that is the slate of nominees. Any questions? Any discussion?
I have a motion to accept the slate.
I'll move it.
Thank you. Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We have no one registered to speak.
Correct.
Okay. So now we're gonna move on to the in motion, the plan to 2050 development process.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to introduce Jen Saponis. So we are in the process, and we've mentioned this before, to update and really replace our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is a regional transportation plan. So Jen's going to walk through a presentation on our approach, on our process. And once I share my screen, Jen, you can take it away. Okay, go ahead, Sandy.
Like Sandy said, we are referring to the new Metropolitan Transportation Plan as in motion, the plan to 2050. We did go through a branding exercise and we landed on in motion because we think it communicates that things are changing, things are moving, and we have to keep on moving and changing to kind of keep up with that. So next slide, Sandy. So, what exactly is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or MTP? It is one of our core products, and its purpose is to serve as a blueprint for regional transportation that reflects a shared vision for our future. It should set ambitious but realistic goals that are financially feasible, and it will set the principles for programming the TIP and also determining major programs and tasks that are in the UPWP for that planning horizon. And it's developed collaboratively, both with the public, stakeholders, all of our state agencies, local governments, and transportation providers. We are coordinating this with all the other ongoing transportation planning initiatives, like the state's Transportation Master Plan, CDTA's Transit Development Plan, CDRPC's Priority Climate Action Plan. So this will incorporate those recommendations and be consistent with that. Next slide. So we broke the MTP process into 5 phases. We completed our first phase data collection at the end of 2023, which resulted in the congestion management plan, the coordinating plan, and the regional trend story map, which we presented in December at the last meeting. We're currently in the inform stage. So we've announced that we're initiating the MPP process and we're developing goals. Next phase is what we're calling the imagine phase, and we'll mostly be visioning. Phase 4 is decision making. So that's really identifying your strategies and principles that are going to be the core of our plan and drafting that plan. And then our final phase is review and adopt. So that'll be the opportunity to review the draft plan and then ultimately adopt a new Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So, like Sandy said, our previous MTP was called New Visions 2050. You may remember it. Our new plan is called In Motion 2050. We are rebuilding the plan and the process. So the major changes, New Visions was one report that included an executive summary, multiple chapters on different topics and themes, a public involvement plan, and air quality conformity analysis. We did a 90-day public review period after the release of the draft plan. And it was staff led with 10 separate 10 to 12 technical subcommittees. In motion, there will be multiple graphically rich, accessible materials. So we presented the story map. We will be doing other materials that maybe some will be online, some will be available as printed plans, but really make them brief and accessible as possible. There's going to be continuous and thorough public involvement in all phases, and it will be staff-led with some guidance from an in-motion task force and some consultant assistance where needed. Next slide. So, what will the task force do? We would like to establish a task force with members that are approved by the policy board to be responsible for reviewing the draft materials and providing feedback on any major policy decisions. We're looking for about 30 members, and I think Sandy may get into that a little bit more later, but representatives from each county, representatives from towns, cities, and villages, transportation agencies and providers, regional planning partners, institutional partners, and advisory committee members. So next slide. And task force members will be expected to serve as subject matter experts. So we are looking for a mix of engineers and planners and other professionals They will be expected to be active participants and provide feedback on all materials, and really come to us with any issues or trends or themes that they are seeing in their work and they want to see reflected in the MTP. We are looking at the duration of the planning process to be now through September 2025. And we estimate about 6 meetings in total. Next slide. So just to give an idea of the roles and responsibilities of the task force, the first meeting tentatively would be April, and it would be to discuss and guide the development of the goals. Resulting actions would be presenting a draft in motion plan goals memo to the planning committee to recommend approval to the policy board, and then presenting that policy board in June for approval. Slide. And then the next meeting would be probably in July, where we discuss and guide development of the regional vision summary and a preliminary illustrative projects list. So that would be presented to planning committee in August and then presented in policy board for approval in September. Next. And then meetings 3 and 4 are really looking at scenarios and doing scenario planning and assessing proposed policies. With presenting those findings of scenarios in February, and then to planning committee and then to policy board in March. Next slide. And then meeting in April where we review the draft plan, and that would be presented to planning committee in May, policy board in June, and then review of the public comments and feedback on the draft and motion plan would be in July 2025, presented to planning committee in August, and then presented to policy board and asked for adoption of the new plan in September 2025. So to develop the plan, we have outlined ambitious public involvement process that is consistent with the goals of our updated public participation plan. So we expect it to be continuous, thorough, inclusive, and effective. Next slide. And as we mentioned earlier, there's going to be public input and opportunities in all phases, all 5 phases. So it will be continuous. There'll be multiple points at which the public will be invited to participate. Next slide. And as you can see, there is a range of different strategies that we will employ at each phase of the planning process. Next slide. And it will be thorough in that we'll be going out to the public, our stakeholders, meeting with and reviewing materials with advisory committees. That information will be reviewed and passed on to the task force and ultimately planning committee and policy board. Next slide. And of course, our goal is to set a really wide net and get as much participation as possible and to be as inclusive as possible. So we are piloting an equity assessment tool where we will be measuring where and how we do outreach and where and how we get engagement from, and comparing that to, different criteria and populations in the region to make sure we get representation. And effective. So we, of course, will be using online tools, surveys, webinars, but we'll also be doing more innovative and in-person types of outreach, going to where people are. You may see us at a bus stop, at a library, a farmer's market. If there are community meetings in your communities that may want us to table or do a presentation, we'd be happy to go there. We are going to use a wide range of strategies to create multiple points of entry into the process. Next slide. So right now we're in the inform stage. And so we are initiating the MTP process. Next slide. We released the regional trends story map, which kind of gives a baseline of where we're at in the region. Next slide. And as we mentioned last meeting, really the major trends that we've recognized just through data collection is slower population growth, growing housing affordability concerns, aging population, increase in traffic crashes, inequality of opportunity, aging infrastructure vulnerable to our changing climate, disconnected development. We have good news is we have an increasing number of transportation options and advanced technologies that present opportunities. There's been a significant shift to working from home, which we see in the work from home data, and a warmer, wetter climate. Next slide. So as part of this stage, we've scheduled an Inform and Imagine virtual workshop, and the registration is currently open, and we will be assembling an in-motion task force. So anyone has any questions about the process?
Thanks, Jen. I just wanted to add to this. In terms of the task force, just to keep it reasonably sized, we can't have every community engaged on it, but we're going to try to target a good cross-section of the municipalities in the region. But if you're personally not involved in it, obviously, we're going to be reaching out throughout the process, and there'll be multiple ways to engage in it. And we're really looking to develop a true new vision for the future. That's part of why we kind of rebranded the long-range plan. We've been talking about new visions for as long as I've been working here. And I know I look outside my window and it looks very similar to how, there's been some improvements, we know this, but what does this next 20 years look like for us? And, what are these bigger ideas that we should be thinking about from a transportation and frankly, a land use perspective as well? So we'll be, doing a lot of work over this next year and a half to generate this new regional transportation plan. And I think one of the features of it that will be new, as Jen alluded to, is just simply less words, more pictures, more interactive, just simplifying what we're talking about, taking the planner lingo out of the equation and talking plain speak so that average people understand what we're talking about when we talk about transportation planning in the region. And then also identifying some of these marquee illustrative projects, which is just a fancy way of saying, what are those big ticket ideas? Your 787s, your 378 bridge, these kind of mega projects that are beyond the scale of maybe what we can fund here around this table, but we know are looming and might need to be done at some point. So we'll be tackling all of those things in the long range plan update. And with that, the action that we wanted today ties to item number 5. Jen sort of reviewed, gave a good overview of all 3 of those documents, and we're looking for your approval of the process so that we can move forward and start really publicizing and marketing what we're doing.
Any questions? Can I have a motion to approve the scope of work?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great, thank you, thank you. Now we're on to Bridge New York.
That is correct. So let me pull up the document. From this point forward on the agenda, I did just want to mention, there's so many items that we're probably not going to give the depth of review as we normally do. Some of you might be happy about that. But please stop me if we're going too fast and if you have any questions. So the Bridge New York program is exactly as it sounds. This is the funding that the state has reserved for bridge repair and replacement. Our planning committee and our staff have worked hard to identify to evaluate 19 applications that were received through the process. There's also a culvert piece which the state DOT handles. And we're recommending 7 projects for funding. So we just wanted to walk through these quickly. The South Albany Road Bridge in Albany County is being recommended for funding. As you may note, the allocation that's available for Albany County is lower than what the project cost is, but Albany County has committed to pay the balance of that. So that bridge, would be financially whole, moving forward. In Rensselaer County, we're recommending 3 bridges for funding: the Brookfield Station Road Bridge, the Control Road Bridge in Hoosick, and the Groside Road Bridge. And I'm not even going to try the name of that creek. You will note that in terms of the total score, we passed on Johnny Cake Lane for 2 reasons. One, in order to maximize the available allocation of funding for Rensselaer County, we wanted to make sure that we were able to fund a bridge that could utilize the bulk of this funding. And then there's actually a parallel bridge very close to Johnny Cake Lane that can be used in lieu of the Johnny Cake Lane Bridge itself. So we're recommending these 3 bridges for funding in Rensselaer County. In Saratoga County, we're recommending 2 bridges, the Finley Road Bridge and the Heath Road Bridge. The Heath Road Bridge actually is an existing TIP project. So we're going to be bringing those 2 projects together. What was a rehab project is now going to be a replacement. We'll be adding the Finley Road. And then in Schenectady County, we had 1 application and it happened to fit the funding. And so we'll recommend the Crane Street Bridge for funding in Schenectady County. So those are the results. Today's action will allow us to add these to the Transportation Improvement Program and ultimately the State Transportation Improvement Program. Any questions?
The ones that were not chosen, are there other sources of funding available, or they wait for next year?
The short term, there is not until for us here, when we get into the TIP update, that would probably be their next opportunity here. So that would be in the fall.
I'll move it if there aren't any other questions.
All right, second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Okay. So now we have TIP amendments.
First one is actually Karen. Did you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, this is actually good news. The red line is our first BRT line. It's been operational since 2011. That's Albany County, students connected. So we had targeted, the original scope of work was the Schenectady County line to downtown Schenectady. This involves new stations, new crosswalks, signalization, et cetera. We were able to receive an additional grant, so additional grant money. And because of that, we expanded the scope east into Colony and to the city of Albany. So we're going to redo the whole corridor. So more money is available to us, and we've expanded the scope rather than wait for a cost increase. So yeah, cost increase, but we'll bring to the table additional funds that to do that. Hard for me to believe that that mine's more than 12 years old.
Okay, so on this highly controversial move of accepting more money, do I have a motion? Second, okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations. Great, and then we're back to you, Sandy.
Great. So the next item is TIP amendment guidelines. So we have a TIP task force you've probably heard about. They've been working hard to refresh and update our procedures related to our transportation improvement program. One of those areas that they recently developed some recommendations for is how we amend and address changes to the transportation improvement program. So just going to walk through this chart a little bit at a high level, but the bulk of what was done is to update and clarify the language that we're using. This table hadn't been updated, we believe, since the 1990s. So it needed a refresh, for sure. We added dollar values as thresholds for the different actions, and took out percentages. There used to be like, oh, the 25% of the project cost triggers this action. That seemed very confusing to all of us, so we just removed that and went straight to dollar values. We changed our language where you've probably heard us use these words, project selection, which to you folks probably means, oh, we're picking new projects, right? Because that seems like that would be the terminology, but we have always meant that as, which is more commonly referred to as administrative modifications. And that's the terminology we're going to go with moving forward. So these are modifications to the TIP that don't require planning committee or policy board approval. There's a dollar value threshold of up to $500,000, and that's cumulative. So meaning if you have a project and you come to the table and you say, we need to add $300,000 to this for a single cost increase, say at this meeting, 6 months from now, you come back and you say, I need another 300, that would trigger a planning committee action, right? Because it's a cumulative total. So it does loosen up a little bit, make some modifications to projects a little easier, but there just still is a sort of a control in there in case there's some larger requests. We also added a minor and a major amendment categories and define them so that it's clear to, especially the folks, because we have a lot of new folks working on this throughout the region, to try to define what we mean by minor and major. And I think those are the major points. I think we've clarified some language, add some more specifics to what we mean by major and minor scope changes. And just simplified what we're doing and how we're explaining it. I know sometimes this is a lot of techno speak, but hopefully this will be a little easier for folks to understand and navigate than we used to have in the past. So this again has been vetted by the TIP task force, which is comprised of a lot of the planning committee members. It's been approved by the planning committee, and I think we feel pretty comfortable moving forward with this program.
Any questions? A motion to adopt the amendment guideline revisions?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks.
Okay, so if I may, the next item is the UPWP. So I will give you, again, I encourage you to look at the document online, what the Unified Planning Work Program is. This is basically our staff and work plan for the coming year. It includes not only the work we'll be doing as a staff, but it will include our consultant-led initiatives and other activities related to transportation planning in the region. It's required, federally required. We have, we're proposing about $6 million worth of work from a range of funding sources, federal, state, and local. The document includes, the types of plans and planning work, the product descriptions, who's going to perform it, the costs, the budgets, the timeframes, fund sources. It contains all of that material. The three big tasks that we'll be working on as a staff this year are the update of the 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program. I can't believe I even just said the year 2030, but that's where we're at. That's usually a pretty hefty staff effort that begins in the fall and will carry forward into the early part of 2025. The second major initiative, which I'm pleased to announce is finally moving forward after many fits and starts, is the development of the Regional Vision Zero Safety Action Plan. This is our regional Safe Streets and Roads for All Planning Grant Award that was received in partnership with the City of Albany, City of Waterville, City of Troy, the Village of Green Island, and Saratoga Springs. So we're have Cambridge Systematics, leading a team of consultants who will be, we'll be diving into this plan now. We just had our kickoff meeting, so expect to hear a lot about Vision Zero safety planning in the region. Our goal with this effort is to develop site-specific and system-level projects eligible for federal funding through numerous grant programs. That's what we're tackling here. It's really important that the outcome of this be implementable projects. So we're looking forward to spending a lot of time, staff time on this and engaging with members of the community. And then as Jen reviewed just now, the development of the emotion plan will be the third big item we're tackling as a staff in this upcoming year. And just a few brief additional activities I just wanted to share. One of the things that we're going to restart is our Equity Advisory Committee. We kind of put that advisory committee on hiatus following the pandemic because we lost our membership. It was sort of lost its way. And we're ready to restart this group. So we'll be reaching out to communities and to the general public to restart the Equity Advisory Committee. It was mentioned earlier, we'll be assisting CDRPC in the development of the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan and the implementation of the US EPA grant program. We're going to be expanding our Clean Cities work beyond our MPO boundaries for the first time, where we've always had the option to do that, but we now have Tess on board as a new staff member whose task is going to be to work on Clean Cities work beyond the 4 counties for the, I believe, 11 counties that program actually covers. So we're looking forward to doing that. We'll also be hosting a Tools of the Trade workshop for our coordinated plan partners, those who provide transportation for those with disabilities and seniors. We'll be providing some NACTO transit street design training in partnership, hopefully with CDTA staff and trying to provide some training through that workshop for complete streets and how we can better integrate transit into street designs. We're going to be issuing an RFP for a survey that tries to identify factors that motivate drivers' transportation choices. And we're going to also be reprogramming the Complete Streets workshop funds that we had set aside to do kind of community level workshops based on a planning committee conversation we had last month to develop sort of a best practice testimonial success stories to try to talk about the benefits of the Complete Streets projects offers, get some quotes and testimonials from elected officials and those in the region that have had some success in implementing Complete Streets, and we're going to try to talk up their benefits and document that as a resource for the region. And then we're also funding 2 new planning studies. One is in the town of Half Moon and the town of Plimpton Park on County Route 109, which is basically a Complete Streets study. And then the second one is very timely because of the recent fatality on Route 7, but it's in the town of Niskayuna, the Route 7 corridor from town line to town line. Which is also a Complete Street study. So that is a very quick highlight reel of our upcoming planning activities in the Unified Planning Work Program. If you have any questions, let me know. But we'll need your approval today to adopt the 2024-25 UPWP.
Questions? There's a motion? Unfair, like, is anybody making motions on Zoom? Putting all the pressure on everyone here in the
I
room.
see they're all muted here.
All right, Carl, Linda, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is our public participation plan document, which we presented to planning committee back in January because this is the only federally required document that we have that requires a mandated by law 45-day public review, which is interesting. I'm not sure what the logic is there, but this is what we do. So with the public participation plan documents, it basically provides our baseline standards for how we outreach and engage with the public. It explains to the public how they can interact with us. And it also talks about how participation in planning activities will be evaluated It deals with a whole slew of federal requirements like civil rights and environmental justice and limited English proficiency. It's all sort of addressed in the draft document. I think the piece, and Jen kind of went over it as it related to the long-range plan update, is the equity integration into our approach. Where what we're trying to say is we're trying to distribute our resources and opportunities for participation in a way that responds to acknowledging the historic and ongoing disadvantages faced by marginalized groups. So we just want to be mindful of the power structure that's in place, and we're going to try to overcome some of the myths and misconceptions that some people in the public realm have about, you know, engaging in processes like this, and also how we can empower them to be a part of the conversation. And all of the groups are sort of listed there. The goals of the plan, again, the continuous, we want throughout a planning process, the lead planning process, we want to have early engagement, we want it to be ongoing, and we even want it to possibly continue once the planning study is done, to keep these community conversations going. We want it to be as thorough as we can get it, so we want to provide as many options to engage, as broad an audience as possible. We want it to be inclusive. Again, different viewpoints and values, broad representation of the community. And we want to make sure that those methods that we're engaging are responsive and accommodating to the different groups and different sections of the region. What might work in downtown Albany might not be the same set of approaches we use in Clifton Park. So we want to make sure we tailor to the demographics of the area. And then as Jen alluded to with effectiveness, we'll be evaluating. See how we do, what can we learn, what are practices that are working, how can we do better. We'll be using public involvement plans, which is the document that Jen, you just approved for the MTP. But these public involvement plans will document for each major activity here at the Transportation Council, how we're going to engage with the public. We're going to have that as our foundation to move forward. Many of our core planning documents will also use that approach on our linkage program planning studies, our local community planning studies. The document, the public participation plan document, also includes sort of schedules and definitions of the different core planning activities, also talks about how we amend these documents. We describe the range of outreach and meeting types that we'll be using and how we're going to be engaging with the public. Public meetings in terms of how we define them here at the Transportation Council, the Policy Board, this group is a public meeting, our Planning Committee is a public meeting, and our 5 advisory committees are going to be public meetings. So that will allow us some flexibility when we have a technical advisory committee that we need, you know, some semblance of, you know, closed door conversation when we're dealing with some tough discussions. And there's lots of ways the public will be informed in terms of how to participate. And then on the evaluation piece, we know that we will be evaluating the public involvement plan itself. It'll contain metrics, again, lessons learned, these kinds of things. Here's just some examples of the metrics we'll be using. A lot of it is just, you know, numbers of clicks, how many newsletter subscribers we have, media hits in the newspaper, these sorts of things. But the equity piece really involves trying to, when we have a survey, collect some demographic information to gain an understanding, are we hitting the populations that actually live in the particular area based on the demographic data that we have available to us. And that's what we're trying to assess with the equity piece. And we'll set annual goals and see how we do. And we'll refresh this once a year. And that's sort of the snapshot version of the public participation plan.
Is there any reason we can't have you present on all of these and just approve all of them?
At least 10, 11, and 12, we can, sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they're all connected, so
That's true, that, no, they are all.
we're on a roll.
So I'll jump into, yeah, that's really fine. So I'll jump into the limited English proficiency plan, which is going to be an appendix actually to the public participation plan. And what we do with the limited English proficiency plan is we do an assessment of our demographic data to identify language groups. You have at least 1,000 persons who speak that language in the region, or it's 5% of the overall regional population speaking that language. And as it happens, based on that criteria, Spanish, Chinese, and now Arabic have met those thresholds. So these three languages, we will be offering more material in translated formats. We'll be offering more options if we get requests for like full documents to be translated. And that's what this plan sort of describes. So not only did we add the new language group of Arabic, the document clarifies some of our existing policies. We expanded meaningful access in terms of the translation and interpretation services. So, we'll have like many executive summaries for our major core documents will be translated into those three languages and additional languages on requests. We'll be offering just more and more of that. For some of the website stuff, we'll be relying a little bit on the web browsers for actual translations of our documents and summary materials. We'll be using a professional service to ensure that the translation is correct. And then for oral interpretation, we have a service on demand. If a Spanish speaker were to come up to us at a meeting, we will have a way to get access to a translator for that person. Or a meeting like this even for that matter. So that's sort of what the LEP plan covers. And then the final piece is the Title VI assurances. That is a very, relates to our civil rights requirements, and just, we updated that material to, add me as the executive director, add our new name to the document, and just one of these federally required, documents that we just need to have updated and refreshed. So all three of those can be taken as a single action.
Great. Do I have a motion? Linda, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Thank you. All right, and then let's see. For the truck parking study, we brought this to you folks, going all the way back to September. And we went through from that point, a public review process, adjusted the document based on some public comments, but I'll just refresh your memory here on some of the findings of the truck parking study. And what we found is that, the excessive utilization, generally speaking, it's overnight parking, where we see the crunch. It's generally on the east end of I-90 near the Mass border. On I-87 on the northern side of the region, sort of concentrated at Wilton, exit 16-17 area. And also around the I-88 Route 7 interchange in Rotterdam. The public review process led to two substantive comments. The first was just removing the word accelerated from the description of Thruway's cashless toll system project. And then the second was just to clarify the geographic scope of the recommendation related to the Rotterdam expansion of parking. And we made those revisions to the reports. The report is available on our website. If you want to refresh your memory of the content, I would refer you to our YouTube channel where we gave a presentation at a prior meeting of the planning committee. And with that, we're looking for your approval of the plan today. The recommendations are all going to get included in our regional transportation plan.
And then what's the goal of that? Sent on to federal government for more funding for truck stops, or?
So by including the recommendations in our long range plan, it gives us that weight to apply for other funding. And we'll be reporting this to the state DOT who's working on the statewide freight plan. Because some of these recommendations might get included in the statewide freight plan. Do you have an estimated time when the statewide one will be?
Not when it will be complete, but we have already had that communication.
There you go.
Actually, if some of these spots are private places, it might actually spur some private truck stop areas or something like that where they're needed.
Yes. I mean, we we have to do something in the city of Albany. Because I have semi trucks parking on our streets. And for what, well, I know the reasons, but, they're parking, directly across from schools. And so the line of sight for kids crossing the street, I mean, it's just creating a real public safety concern. So, we tried limiting the parking. It's really hard to put a ticket on a semi. So I had a grievance from our parking, understandably. But I think, we want to be able to just ban it in school zones altogether because it's just not safe.
You need to actually find a place for them to park that's off the street or something like that. And in a lot of communities, it's like, oh, well, we don't want any parking. And it's like, but you want the shipping and you want the businesses or whatever. And these guys, when their time comes, they gotta get off the road or they can get a ticket. So it's like, you almost really need to encourage communities to plan truck parking areas in their communities. So they're not doing that. So they're not double parking on Route 7 over in Brunswick, because it's like, oh, I'm hungry, I want to stop somewhere and get something to eat. It's like, you gotta give them places to go.
So we have to adopt this. Yes.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you.
I'll point out that Andrew hasn't moved anything yet.
Absolutely quiet.
It's all during planning. So did I, that's. I remember some of these.
Okay, so advisory committee operating policies. Planning committee members, I know you've heard this before. We've been updating our policies related to our advisory committees, as I just described. These are going to be treated as public meetings here. So what the goal was in developing this policy and series of policies was to treat all 5 of our advisory committees equally in terms of how we're going to manage them. We have the 5R for your reminder is the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. We have Freight Advisory Committee, a Human Services Transportation Advisory Committee, our Regional Operations and Safety Advisory Committee, and as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be restarting our Equity Advisory Committee. So we were trying to clarify the role of each advisory committee and commenting and being part of the planning process, what the participant roles and responsibilities are. And again, provide that consistent framework across the advisory committee. So the document that's on the website in the policy book materials basically documents what planning studies and other documents the advisory committee members will be able, or participants will review and comment on. It'll talk about the role of the advisory committees during our tip update and how they go about commenting on capital projects, which has been one of the challenges with the advisory committees is this desire to really weigh in on the design of projects. But what we're saying to the participants is that the place to do that is through the individual project's design process, not through this advisory committee. It doesn't mean you can't offer comments. It's just that the right place to offer that kind of detailed comment is really through the public participation related to the design of that project. The document also clarifies in the policy what participants can't do. So there's a whole range of things like using our logos without our permission, representing yourself as a decision maker here. There's a whole slew of things that we asked and documented what participants can't do. And it also outlines our approach to meetings. So this is probably the biggest change for most of the advisory committees is going to be, again, treating them all the same way. We're saying the meetings are open to all. There's no appointment process to be a part of these advisory committee meetings. If you're interested in a topic, you're welcome to attend. Each group will have at least one planning committee member on the contact list, which I think we already do now, sometimes more. Our staff is going to be the chair or sort of manage each meeting, setting the agendas. Our meeting dates will announce via the website, newsletter, social media. We plan on posting agendas and meeting materials 1 week prior to the meeting on our website, and they'll be emailed directly to the participants. And probably the biggest change is that we're gonna be broadcasting the meetings live like we do this meeting, recording the meetings and making those videos available for folks to watch later on if they can't attend the meeting, which has been one of the challenges with some of the advisory committees. We have them during the workday, and if you're not able to come to the meetings with the YouTube video, you can go back and watch later on if there's something you're interested in learning about. We're also adding public comment agenda items to each agenda, and the idea here is sometimes we've had situations where advocates or members of the public have a real hot button issue and it kind of overrun the meeting. So we want to make sure that if there is somebody who has a particular hot button topic, that they have an opportunity to register to speak, but the bulk of the agenda will be what's set by the staff member. And then written comments can be submitted by calling or emailing in advance or at any time. So that's sort of the brief summary of the advisory committee policies. Does anybody have any questions or concerns?
Is this because they're subject to the open meetings law, or is it just our internal policy?
So this is our internal policy. As it turns out, MPOs like us, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, are not technically subject to open meetings law. So we are trying to be as transparent as we can be and respect it as much as we can. Okay.
Any other questions? So we need to approve these changes?
Yes.
Can I have a motion? Okay, Steve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Right, almost to the end. So the next item is our solicitation for ADA transition plans. You may remember we've had this program in place for a couple of years now. We're almost to the point where I think all of the larger communities in the region have participated in this program in some way. So we'll see what we get in terms of responses this year, but what we're seeking are proposals from communities who want to either develop a ADA transition plan, want to collect data related to their sidewalk infrastructure, or undertake other policy development activities. We'll be, with your approval today, we'll issue the solicitation in the next few days with a deadline of April 5th for applications from communities. The link showing on the screen leads us to more detailed information and the application material. But this has been a program we've had in place now, I think, for about 5 or 6 years. I know we funded many transition plans in the region. It's been a good program, I feel like. So we just need your approval for this issue of this solicitation.
Any questions? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Great. And the final one is just sort of administrative approval. The timing of the 5310 program, which is one of the transit programs that we work with DOT related to sort of the implementation of the coordinated plan. So vehicles for senior centers and these kinds of transit vehicles in the region. The timing is just that we don't have a policy board in time to meet the DOT deadline. So what we're asking of you today is to delegate the authority we'd usually bring to you folks, the list of projects for your approval for addition to the tip, and delegate that to the planning committee so they can act in April.
Hats on the planning committee?
No.
Is it because these are broadcast on YouTube? I should probably not be so flippant. Any questions?
Well, most of these are relatively small costs anyways, I think.
Yeah, it's just that the formality of the MPO process still requires the board to act. So by delegating it to the planning committee, we don't have to convene a special meeting because we've already done that to you guys once this year. So we don't want to do that again.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Can I take that as a motion?
Motion, yes.
Do I have a second? Thanks. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you. All right, I think that's the end of our action items, and I appreciate you sticking with us through that. The last item that I just wanted to, I sent some emails around to many of you this last couple of weeks. I think I sent a follow-up yesterday to some of you. We are going through our federal certification review process. This is where the federal government, specifically the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration comes to assess our planning process to make sure it's in compliance with federal regulations. It's done every 4 years. If you're really interested, we have the 2020 report up on our website. But the site visit is next week, March 12th to the 14th. I forwarded along to the members the schedule of events. If you can, the best ways for you folks to participate would be to complete the public survey, which is open through April 15th. And if you're willing, maybe share that through your social media channels or other newsletters or whatever you have access to in your jurisdiction. And if you have some time on Wednesday evening between 4:30 and 6:30, you can stop by here, participate in the public meeting. You can also do it virtually through Zoom, and you just need to pre-register for the virtual meeting. And then if you're really interested in just sort of commenting on the process, you can participate in some of the topical sessions. Again, we offer virtual options for all of this. And if you want to report your thoughts on our process directly to the Federal Highway Administration, Nicole McGrath and Kayla Shermer from Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration respectively, would welcome an email with any thoughts or concerns and good news for our transportation planning process. So a lot of the actions you took today are to get us in compliance with some of these documents that hadn't been updated in a while. So that's part of why the agenda was so lengthy today. So I do appreciate your patience with us.
Great, thanks. Okay, so now we're just gonna go and do our Regional Transportation Planning Initiatives update. We're gonna start with, you don't have anything additional?
I think I am done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So CDRPC.
So just a couple of items, one on sustainability that I'm gonna hand off to Mark on the broadband access program. He's a lot deeper on that than I am. But real quick on sustainability, the Regional Planning Commission has come in on or slightly ahead of schedule on putting together the priority climate action plan that specifies the goals, strategies to implement the federal US EPA climate pollution reduction grants program, and setting forth near-term strategies and policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and creates the framework for subsequent grant awards. And there's $5 billion to be sitting out there from the federal government for these types of programs. And the priority climate action plan is available now on the CDRPC website. I encourage everybody to take a look at that, and it's open for public comment. And then ultimately, we're on schedule to adopt the comprehensive community climate action plan in September of 2025. So that's my piece. And then Mark, if you want to just.
Sure, we have a couple grants totaling about $450,000 to do regional broadband planning. We're currently coordinating with all 4 counties and their respective leads on broadband projects, hopefully with the goal of submitting applications to the New York State Connect All office to provide service where there is none and to enhance service where there's a lack of good service.
Any questions? Carm, give it over to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna bet against myself on the over under in the interest of time.
We can stretch it out.
We continue to introduce projects to be bigger and better.
Thanks. Mike?
Thank you for canceling winter, everybody.
Yeah.
ASAP. I'm sure the survey does as well, but gives us a chance to do some other work. So I can announce some recent bid results. We have pin 181131 was a bridge deck replacement, 2 sites. We had a low bid of 6.8 million. This was on January 25th. January 11th, we had pin 1045.17, which is bridge painting for the Troy Manans Bridge. A little bid on that was 7.3 million. Multi-site culvert project, pin 181090 was, wet on January 11th, and that was a little bit of 5.4 million. And a bridge washing project region-wide, pin 181129, December 14th, 2023 was a little bit of $1 million. Upcoming weddings, we've got a few there as well. March 28th is a multi-site pavement resurfacing project. April 11th is another multi-site pavement resurfacing project. And then a couple capital district projects. May 9th is interstate overhead sign structure replacement. And May 23rd is I-90 pavement resurfacing Corporate Woods to I-787. An update on the Livingston Avenue Bridge. We appreciate the council's support for the special planning committee meeting last month. And FHWA reviews are wrapping up, and we expect a notice to proceed later this month. Transportation alternatives, TAP CMAQ carbon reduction program update. NISDOT is reviewing those. It's ongoing with announcements to follow. And the Culvert New York program update, the region received 43 applications totaling $55.1 million versus the allocation amount of $15 million. And the regional reviews have been submitted to the main office and announcements to follow as well. That's it.
Okay. Any questions? Great. Thanks. The Thruway Authority, Phil.
So just one update for the pavement projects. Will be starting in the next several weeks to couple months between 25 and 26. Well, long overdue, so. Making some smooth ride out there for a while.
Great. Do we have anybody from the airport?
Not today.
Not, okay. Pat, what's happening at the port?
I think in the interest of Carm's bet, I'll hold mine to the next meeting.
I've already lost.
Already lost. But under other, I do want to recognize that Carm and CDTA are going to get the Changemaker Award next Thursday at the Regional Chamber of Commerce dinner, which is a huge, one of their biggest awards, and really nice job. Congratulations.
Great. Okay. Do you have anything on regional local planning activities?
Nope, the table of our status of planning activities is all available online if you'd like to look.
Okay, great. Any other business? On the agenda, you have the list of upcoming meetings. Encourage everyone to come to the St. Patrick's Day Parade in the city of Albany. And hope that you all have a wonderful rest of March with no snow.
Thanks.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? So move. Do I have a second? Are you willing to second the motion to adjourn?